Think about that massive garbage truck that rumbles down your street every single week. It is a hulking, heavy piece of machinery, and keeping tens of thousands of them running requires a staggering amount of fuel. Welcome to this explainer on how waste management fleets are navigating the massive financial and environmental impacts of all that fuel consumption. We're going to be basing this directly on the SASB waste management standard, looking specifically at how the heavy trucks collecting our waste are transitioning toward a cleaner, much more competitive future. So to really grasp the scale of this, we have to ask a pretty crucial question. When those heavy trucks roll through your neighborhood, what is actually driving the highest operating costs behind that service? Consider this for a second. A typical heavy waste collection truck might get somewhere around 3 miles to the gallon. 3. It's incredibly easy to overlook from the sidewalk, but the fuel consumption of these large fleets is literally one of the single most significant financial burdens in the entire industry. To figure out how the industry is handling this, we're going to follow the money through 4 quick areas: the cost of collection, the pollution risks, the shift to alternative fuels, and finally, how we actually measure that performance. All right, part 1, the cost of collection. Let's look at the harsh financial realities of fueling thousands of heavy trucks. For entities operating in the waste management industry, owning and running large vehicle fleets for collection and transfer is obviously fundamental to the business model. But man, that fuel consumption represents a massive financial weight. It severely drives up daily operating expenses, and it heavily dictates long-term capital expenditures when it actually comes time to maintain, upgrade, or replace those vehicles. Now, because these fleets have historically relied so heavily on fossil fuels, they're exposed to massive price swings at the pump. To deal with this, a super common tool used by companies is hedging their fuel purchases to manage the financial risk. But here's the catch. While hedging acts as a temporary financial safeguard, the underlying reliance on fossil fuels remains a massive, volatile cost center. It needs a permanent solution. And the true cost isn't just measured at the pump. That brings us to part 2. Pollution and competitive risks, going well beyond the bottom line. The exhaust from traditional waste collection fleets does a lot more than just burn through cash. Fossil fuel consumption contributes heavily to broader environmental impacts, specifically climate change. But importantly, it also causes severe localized pollution that absolutely frustrates communities living near waste management facilities. When you have heavy, constant traffic from these large fleets in populated areas, it becomes a very visible and, frankly, very breathable problem for the public. This creates a really stark strategic divide across the industry. Think about the old way, relying heavily on fossil fuels. That directly increases regulatory exposure as environmental laws tighten, and it will actively cost you bids for municipal contracts. Now, look at the new way. Transitioning to cleaner, fuel-efficient fleets generates highly favorable community perception. It literally takes a massive liability and flips it into a competitive advantage, helping to secure those lucrative long-term bids. So, how are companies actually fixing this exposure? Let's dive into part 3, the alternative fuel solution. The primary solution, right out of the SASB standard, is upgrading fleets to alternative fuel vehicles. And this is a remarkably broad and innovative space. It includes everything from natural gas and electricity to hydrogen, biodiesel, propane, and even advanced lean burn technologies, or hybrid electric systems. Upgrading to these fuel-efficient and alternative options, particularly natural gas vehicles, is exactly how companies directly mitigate those environmental impacts and seriously boost their competitive edge. Furthermore, when we talk about fuel upgrades, entities are increasingly shifting toward renewable fuels. But you can't just slap the word renewable on any fuel. The standard is incredibly strict here to prevent greenwashing. To count, a renewable fuel must be produced from renewable biomass, it has to be used specifically to replace or reduce fossil fuel in the mix, and it must definitively achieve a net reduction in greenhouse gas emissions over its entire life cycle. No shortcuts. To prove they are actually making these shifts, though, they need transparent reporting, which leads us to part 4, measuring fleet performance. The SASB waste management standard provides the exact structured framework that investors and municipalities rely on to track this fleet transition. These standards are now under the stewardship of the International Sustainability Standards Board, ensuring that the metrics companies report are standardized, reliable, and incredibly useful for investors trying to gauge operational efficiency and risk management. Getting into the specifics, there are 2 main quantitative metrics used to track the sustainability and financial risk of a waste management fleet: IFWWM 110B 1.1 and 110B.2. Let's break down exactly what these require.
First up, under metric 110B1, companies follow a strict three-step disclosure. Step 1. Track the absolute total fuel consumed across the entire fleet measured in gigajoules. By measuring the absolute energy in gigajoules, they are capturing the actual energy output rather than just the raw volume of liquid pumped into a tank. And this must be based on actual fuel consumed, like adding fuel purchases to beginning inventory rather than just relying on theoretical design parameters. Then steps 2 and 3. Calculate what percentage of that total energy consumption came from natural gas and what percentage came from renewable fuel.
Now, here's the crucial point for accuracy. You cannot easily compare a gallon of liquid diesel to a compressed tank of natural gas or a charged battery. It is literally comparing apples to oranges. To fix this, the standard strictly requires using higher heating values, also known as gross calorific values. Think of these as a universal translator. Applying these conversion factors consistently ensures that energy data is universally comparable across the entire waste management industry without any distortion.
Finally, we have the second metric, 11TB.2. This one cuts right through the complexity and requires companies to simply disclose a hard, undeniable number: the percentage of their entire fleet that is made up of alternative fuel vehicles. Calculated by taking the number of alternative energy vehicles and dividing it by the total vehicles in the fleet, it gives us a crystal clear, quantitative indicator of how fast a company is successfully transitioning its physical assets away from fossil fuel dependence.
Ultimately, fleet fuel management isn't just about saving a few cents at the pump. It is about operational survival. It's about mitigating massive environmental impacts, and it's about winning lucrative municipal contracts in a rapidly changing world. So, the next time you hear that heavy garbage truck rumbling down your street, it kind of leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Is your local waste management fleet still running on the financial and environmental risks of the past? Or are they actively driving toward a clean, competitive future?